welcome to this week's episode of the Dublin to Denver podcast with me, Colum Cronin. We are hurtling towards the middle of May. Rookie minicamp kicked off, the Broncos starting later than anybody else. But I suppose the big news in Broncos country this week is the extension of General Manager George Paton. And like I suppose we'll get into it. He has had an interesting tenure in Denver, where the early parts were beyond rocky, and things have brightened up considerably since the arrival of Sean Payton. To delve into the contract extension and to touch on rookie minicamp and Sean Payton holding court and making proclamations and pronouncements, I am joined, as always, by my friend, colleague, and co-host, Stuart Roach. Stuart, how are you doing, sir?
Colum, I'm doing very well. Like you, this is my favorite time of the year where every player looks amazing. Every draft pick, we've absolutely knocked it out of the park. And several, if not double-figure amounts of undrafted free agents are locks to make the 53-man roster. Look, at least there's some actual news, and we are near the end of the phony war. And look. I mean, I think obviously, Colin, from a Broncos point of view, the worth remembering that we were supposed to talk about Jonah Coleman, but thankfully in great detail. But we'll we don't have to talk about Jonah in great detail because we've had some genuine news. But the big item obviously is the George Paton extension, 5-year contract, I believe. Is that right, Colin? Yeah. So that's not insignificant. And look, you have to say, Colin, certainly in the last 2 years, we are very much trending in the right direction as a team, as an organization. As he said, it is, you cannot discount the fact that it's greatly tied in with Sean Payton, coming back out of retirement and or sort of his hiatus, I suppose, as opposed to retirement. And I will say this, Colin, about George Payton, and it's a quality I think that it's underrated, and I think it's something that we do need to give him great credit for, is when he makes a mistake, as he has done, because he's human, and just like every GM in pretty much every sport, you're going to make mistakes. But when he makes a mistake, he is very quick to rectify it. He doesn't sort of sit around and hope for it to get better. And I do think, look, and nobody likes to make direct comparisons between him and his predecessor, John Elway, who did deliver us Peyton Manning, delivered us 2 Super Bowl trips and 1 Super Bowl victory. But John Elway was not a man to sort of question himself, he felt. Hence, we got 2 years of both Vance Joseph and Vic Fangio's head coaches, when it was blatantly obvious to anybody who had any knowledge of the NFL that both of them were massively out of their depth at head coaches. Certainly at that time for Vance, and at every time for Vic Fangio. So I do admire that about George Paton, Colum, and it's a quality, I think, as I said, that is not to be sneezed at. Hackett, as I just mentioned there, was quickly jettisoned. He brought back an adult. He made the big swing for Russell Wilson. Again, it became pretty clear pretty quickly that was a massive mistake. But they took the hit. They took the largest salary cap hit, I think, in history. From one player at the time, and they moved on, and they went and they drafted a quarterback, and we are now where we are directly because of those 2 pieces of key actions by George. So look, I think, like anybody, I think that there are times when you question what exactly he's doing, but most of the time I think you have to feel like we're in good, solid hands with George. His drafts are pretty good. We've been able to attract good free agents. This summer in particular was really helped by most of the free agents being already in the building, which was a unique strategy, which we'll see if it pays off. But even allowing for the sort of the comedy value of us deciding to break the records, bringing it back, we did then subsequently go out and make the big trade for Jalen Waddle. So look, I have to say, I think this is probably the most excited I've been as a Broncos fan since Peyton Manning rode off into the sunset. I think that would probably be the case for everybody. And George Payton's played a huge part in that, Column. So I wouldn't downplay his contributions. I think he's been really one of the key factors in the Broncos' resurgence. Obviously, the ownership getting resolved and having the owners that we do, and having a head coach like Sean Payton, who's probably, a Hall of Famer. You'd imagine he certainly will be if he wins a second Super Bowl, which is what we're all hoping for. So I think it's well-deserved. And, like the quarterback position, Colin, I think general manager is something that we no longer have to worry about. And we've got a good one now. And, long may it continue. And it's certainly going to continue for 5 years, unless things completely fall off the rails. I guess, Colin, for me, just looking a little bit into the future, you'd imagine, touch wood, hopefully you're not going to deal with any serious injuries, but the next crucial bit of business you think that's going to be on George's radar in the coming years is when Sean Payton decides to call it a day, and we'll see if you can get that decision right. But hopefully it won't be for another year or two, or hopefully it won't be until at least he's delivered one Super Bowl.
I'm happy with the extension as long as Sean Payton is beside him. And you're right to give him the credit, Stuart. He, I think as a draft evaluator in particular, he does seem to have an eye. Look, nobody will ever get every pick correct, but he certainly has an eye for talent. I caveat because even before Sean arrived, it was an unmitigated disaster. And I think we've probably kind of, because Bo Nix has revolutionized the franchise after the doldrums, and because, we were in the AFC Championship game, we've almost, because it was so bad, blanked it out. George came in and he presided, and you're right that at least he moved on quickly, but he presided in his first season over that debacle where everybody, if they were leaving Fangio in situ, they had to move off of Drew Lock, right? Vic Fangio hated Drew Lock ever since the COVID protocols. It was absolute lunacy. I mean, we all remember the birthday video where he basically baked a cake for Teddy, wore a party hat, had streamers, and then one of the media says, "It's Drew's birthday too," and he deadpans, "Yeah, it is." And I mean, it was insane to keep him around. It made no sense. It created a near civil war amongst Broncos fans. He also brought in Randy Gregory, who had no more interest in playing football than as Juwan James, as it turned out. We specialize in signing those guys. Now, fortunately, again, we moved off of them. But then you go in and the full story about that trade, right? Because we had done everything possible to woo Aaron Rodgers. Right? We tried in the draft the year before. Then we bring in his best mate as head coach. And anyone out there listening, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're questioning yourself at work and you're wondering, are you qualified? Nathaniel Hackett was a head coach in the NFL, and not a head coach for one of those Machia, as we would say in Cork, one of those ridiculous franchises like the Arizona Cardinals or the Las Vegas Raiders or the Jacksonville Jaguars. No, he was a head coach for a bona fide triple Super Bowl winning team in the Denver Broncos. And George presided over that. They were all in for Rodgers. That fell apart, and it seems like they just decided, well, let's go get Russ then. Again, not kind of taking anything into consideration around Russ's style of play, the questions around Russ's leadership, the questions around Russ's decline, all of that stuff. And I just put that in there. Again, he has shown sense that, and I think he works very well with Sean Payton. I think they seem to kind of they're very different characters, but it seems to work, which is fantastic. But I certainly would have concerns if Sean wasn't around. Now together, great combination. I just, the hope would be that Sean Payton is sticking around. We will see. But that is the piece. Very happy with Sean Payton in situ. I think it's a continuation that you want. I think continuity when it's the right pairing, absolutely fantastic. We shall see. And it's difficult to know as well, because how much say does either of them have? We know certainly Sean has some, and I know our friend Mike Carmelini. He pointed out to the famous Bill Parcells quote about well, if they're gonna make you do the cooking, they better give you the opportunity to go get some of the groceries. And so undoubtedly Sean has some say in it. How much say George has, that's the interesting piece, and the secret sauce that we don't get to see. But look, I guess the Penners are not hurting for money, certainly. Even if Walmart are in the news this week for some interesting weight disparities between what's shown on the label and what you may bring home. But talking about weight, that might lead us on to the segue to the Sean Payton press conference, where he talked about a 7th round pick from last year, Stuart, who looks like a new man on every level. He's bulked up apparently, and he was the most impressive figure that Sean saw at rookie minicamp, and that is Caleb Lohner, the 7th round tight end, who they threw a dart last year to get him, and then they went and they got 2 more tight ends in the draft this year. What did you make of Sean's comments?
Yeah, they threw a dart last year, Colum. It hit the wall, bounced back, and hit them in the eye. Well, like, Colum, I don't think we're gonna, be sort of spilling state secrets here. When I sent you that message this morning about Sean's comments, the cynicism that sort of seems to exist perennially between the two of us immediately raised its ugly head again, and we both were in complete agreement that this is a desperate attempt by Sean to try and get a 7th round draft pick. Because if Caleb Lohner, who was, lest we forget, this time last year, the next Jimmy Graham, if Caleb Lohner was really as good as Sean is making him out to be, then why did we go and draft 2 tight ends recently, both of whom are bona fide tight end players in college who have experience and have flashed. One of whom, Jolie, Colum, I think most people would expect is going to see the field on a fairly regular basis next year. So, look, he seems like a good guy, Colum. He has presumably done some work, because it was probably a huge shock to his system last year to end up, even drafted, and then on a team that has such a tradition of for a head coach that has a tradition of using tight ends aggressively. So you'd expect a player who had zero impact on the roster last year. I mean, zero impact. He didn't. Did he get a single? Was he active for a single game? Maybe one. For some reason, I think maybe he was active for 1 game. Didn't see the field. Didn't get a ball thrown at him. Didn't get a catch, obviously. So you'd imagine that somebody who's like that, who has professional pride, which they all do, would clearly go and work hard in the off season, because like that's the done thing. Colum, I guarantee you that any player last year that may have gone through something of a rough sort of a rough patch is going to come back looking like a new player, because they will have also gone and worked out and would have bulked up and would have run routes with trainers in the off season, because that's what everybody does. So, I'm just thinking of like Troy Franklin's going to come back with an extra 10 pounds of muscle. You could be 100% sure that that's what's going to happen. So look, as I said, it seems like a nice guy, but maybe if we hadn't drafted Bentley and Jolie when we did, maybe there might be something to this. Maybe we would now be excited and sort of, going against our better judgment and thinking, okay, this guy's got a chance. Maybe he will be a weapon in the red zone. But he's not going to be. Or if he is going to be a weapon in the red zone, it's going to be for the Jets or, the Browns. It's not going to be for the Broncos. Like, I hope I'm wrong, Colum, and he will be a great story. Jolie is not going to catch a pass for the Denver Broncos in the regular season next year. He might do something in the preseason games, exhibition games. He might do, and if he does, then maybe we'll be able to trade him. But as I said, kind of jokingly at the start, this is the time of the year where every rookie's going to look amazing. We've knocked it out of the park. Obviously, I think they included players like Caleb Lohner if they hadn't seen any significant minutes. So I'm not sure. There was probably one or two others that were there that aren't technically rookies. I'm sure they looked amazing as well because you kind of should. And especially if you've already had a year in the system. So Caleb Lohner should probably have looked better than a lot of the guys that were there. And let's not forget that we didn't draft until the third round either. So it's not like we picked in the top 5. So you've got a bona fide superstar there that should look amazing. So, I mean, to me, Colin, the only really interesting thing that sort of came out in the last sort of 24 hours or the last 48 is Jonah Coleman looks amazing with the proviso that he's wearing shorts and it's not full contact or anything like that. He looks a lot faster than people thought he was because that was the knock on him. He didn't have breakaway speed, which is the thing that sort of stopped him from potentially being elite. But he looks fast, he looks strong, and he looks like he runs very, very crisp routes, and he looks like he's, the drills are obviously second nature to him at this point. But that to me is the really exciting news, Colin, because he is, and I think we spoke about this last week, and this is kind of a way of us talking about Jonah Coleman, but he is the one player that you are almost certain that you're going to need to lean on at some point because he's an excellent running back as he's proven in college, A, but B, much more importantly, J.K. Dobbins is going to get in at some point, and we've already seen that movie and it wasn't a very good one. So we need a different option. And, very early days, still May, but all the sounds are that Jonah Coleman has really impressed people. And apparently he's a really good interview as well. Coleman very mature. I think he was a team captain at Washington. So it sounds like we've got a really good player there. And I think of all the stuff that's going to sort of peter through in the next week or two, that's the one I think that we should be most excited about because I think that is the most significant news because he is the one player, as I said, that you can be damn sure we're going to need at some point. Jolie maybe too, but that might be more to do with Evan Ingram or maybe, Adam Troutman. Whatever he has on Sean Payton expiring. So maybe he won't be able to see the field as much as he did last year. So Jolie could be a player we need, but Jonah Coleman is the one. But if you're asking me, Coleman, you're not. But if you were to ask me who's the one player from the rookies, and including the undrafted free agents, I'm going to go for two. The two players I think they're going to have the most impact are Jonah Coleman and Red Murdoch, the linebacker out of Buffalo.
I suppose a couple of things, Stuart. I just said when you mentioned the Jimmy Graham thing, I said I just see did anyone, and there genuinely is a video out there that asked the question: is Caleb Lohner the NFL's next Jimmy Graham? So these people are amongst us. The person I suppose I see him most commonly compared to is Mo Ali Cox for the Colts. A guy who again hadn't played in college. Now Mo Ali Cox spent the first year with the Colts on the practice squad and then was elevated in his second season. and has kind of been a contributor. He's never gone over 400 yards of the season, but he's been a contributor for the Colts, certainly, and has maximized his ability. I think he's 8 years in the league, given that it's a league where people generally, I think the average is less than 3 seasons. That's an incredible achievement. It's more than billions and billions of people around the world. And I would love Caleb Lohner to do it. Sean, it's the time of year and it's what he does, and he's going to try to, puff everybody up. But you've pointed out that he's a year in the system, so of course he should, look a bit better. And it's that time of year. We have seen this. We've seen it in training camp, where the media have talked up players. Washington being the one that stands out for me as a wide receiver, and the Broncos QB3. Obviously the Broncos fans falling in head over heels in love with QB3. So we'll see. It'd be nice if he was receiving threat. He was elevated from the practice squad for the game against the Bills, but he was inactive for the game itself. I think, that's why he was able to go to rookie minicamp again. I will say that I think there might have been, I think players got a bonus if they were elevated at least once. So I think that's what that was in relation to, but he wasn't active for the game. If you remember, Stuart, there was a lot of buzz at the time because Elijah Moore had also been elevated, but neither ended up being active, even though with the injuries, both Bo Nix didn't have a running back. There's the other George Paton piece, by the way. No insurance policy for running back last year, and that would be so at least we've addressed that, as I said, with Coleman. We'll see, but that that's another piece I'd kind of point to. Yes, Stuart, you wanted to come in there.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you slightly on that one, Colum. I would probably put that one more on Sean Payton, to be honest.
Well, but both both. I mean, but this is I suppose the thing that we don't know where what George's in, and I can see why you say, Sean, in many respects. In any other organization, that's on the GM. The GM does roster construction essentially. So it's interesting. We just don't know where George's role really lies. I mean, is it just in scouting and evaluating? Is it in the contract renewals? It would be fascinating, and again, we'll never really get a sense of it, but that is it's an interesting piece. And look, with them bringing in Coleman, I think they have obviously addressed it, but again, highlights, Stuart, to me, that Sean is, and I am delighted that Sean Payton is our head coach, but he is a bald-faced liar. And that's fine. You have to be, right? That's the media game. He's an honest liar. But he told you, the George Sean combo told you just before the draft that RJ Harvey could be RB1. They told you that Audric Estime. I know he didn't play against the Bills, but no, we have high hopes for Audric. Don't worry, he'll be back. We have big plans for him. Is he going to be? Are we going to sign him to? Is he? Are we going to see him in a Broncos shirt all of a sudden? The resurrection. It's how the game has to be played, and as you pointed out, you can't keep everybody. The Broncos currently have more than 100 players. If one looks at who they brought back, who they drafted, undrafted free agents, and the guys they brought in as kind of camp bodies for rookie minicamp, Peterman is not going to be signing. He's just a body that's around there for right now, and that's fine. I think the fact that George did get the contract extension, Sean may, we know George loves draft picks, and particularly late round draft picks. So he might be talking somebody up in order to get his buddy another one. And but there's no way the Broncos are carrying 6 tight ends. We absolutely know that for sure. And I would be utterly amazed if Lohner was anything more than a practice squad player. Again, I think Stuart and I would love if he was developing into something. I think both Stuart and I would love if the Broncos went 17-0. We would love to see the Broncos, given that we both it scared us both. We'd love to see the Broncos put a beat down on somebody in the Super Bowl, even better than what the 49ers did to us. We want that. That is what we would love. But we're also not going, what are the chances of that? So that is where we're coming at it from. I think for me, Stuart, I think it will be it'll be the tight end battle, that to see how that plays out, in training camp, because somebody's losing out now, whether that is the rookies or whether that's some of the vets, but there's definitely no way they're going to be able to carry everybody there. I think there's also, there aren't a whole lot of starting roles open on this team, given where the Broncos are at. So I think that the pieces where it's not completely set is inside linebacker. I think that's a piece where but like nobody is unseating any of the offensive line. I just can't see that. Nobody's unseating either of the edges. Sutton and Waddle will be 1 and 2, and then it'll be interesting to see what it goes on 3, after that. There has been some, just before we get finish up, Stuart, one of the things to get your opinion on is a lot of talk. Obviously, Marvin Mims spoke this week, and there are some Broncos fans that feel that maybe the Broncos didn't necessarily need to do the trade to bring in Waddle, because they feel Marvin Mims could have developed into that role. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not sure it's entirely his fault, Colin, but he's had 2 full seasons now, and he hasn't looked like he's going to develop into what Jalen Waddle is. Jalen Waddle was picked 6th in the draft, Colin, and I don't recall a huge outcry of him being overdrafted. I mean, I think most people felt that was the right position that he was taken, and he's played with mediocre quarterbacks in his entire time in Miami, Colin, and he still put up outstanding numbers. So I really like Marvin Mims, Colin, and I think he's shown in the last 2 seasons, particularly as the seasons are kind of reaching the crescendo, when you need big players to step up, you'd see Marvin Mims' output has really increased as the games have become more important, and he was outstanding in the victory against Buffalo. In the similar fashion the year beforehand, he was really, really good against, say, the Bengals, and that game we lost in overtime. He's great against the Browns when he obviously caught that huge touchdown pass. But I really like Marvin Mims, Colin, but he's not going to be as good as Jalen Waddle. And I would be really disappointed if they traded Marvin Mims, because I think Cortland Sutton's not going to go on forever. So you'd imagine Waddle is going to be shifted to wide receiver 1, and then that sort of log jam that's behind him then will open up a little bit. But I think, like, Waddle has great positional flexibility. Colin, he can line up in the slot. He can line out wide. Mims hasn't necessarily shown that yet, because you look at Mims sometimes, Colin, you think that guy should really be a lethal slot wide receiver, but he doesn't seem to line up there very often. But I think like most of the positions on the team, Colin, guys are going to have to really work for minutes and for snaps. And I think the wide receiver room is absolutely the same as all those other ones, like the running back room and the cornerback room, stuff like that. So that's the kind of competition you want amongst the team to try and get people onto the field. So obviously you've got your superstars like your Pats Patans, your Waddles, Dobbins when he's fit, the 2 outside pass rushers, as you say. But it's the guys who are coming in behind them. You're going to see hopefully we'll see a huge amount of hunger for players to really to get onto the field and then to do something with it when they get the opportunity, and that can only be good for the Broncos. But I can kind of see where people are coming from, but I don't know if Marvin Mims is ever going to be as good a wide receiver as Jalen Waddle. But that is because I think Jalen Waddle is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, Colin. That's not a slight necessarily on Marvin Mims. It's just where I think they are at the moment. But I Marvin Mims would not be one of the wide receivers that I would be trading if that's where that not saying that you were saying it, but if that's what that conversation was sort of leaning towards, I would be far quicker to trade Troy Franklin or Pat Bryant also before I would trade Marvin Mims. But I wouldn't trade any of them. Like all you need to do is remember, Colin, where we were at when we sort of, before even Knicks got injured. What was the wide receiver room in that game against Buffalo? We had 3 players: Cortland Sutton, Little Jordan Humphries, and Mims. That was it by the end, right? So it's a long, grueling season, and if rumors are to be believed, it's going to get even longer sooner. So I think you need to hang on to those wide receivers, Colin. There are players who we could get something for, and I'm not jokingly including Caleb Lohner in this, but there are players we could get something for that I think would be more palatable to me than a trade of Marvin Mims. So I hope we keep him, because I do think like he has given us that deep ball threat column that we have sorely lacked apart from him in the last couple.
Yeah, I think he offers a very different sort of threat, and I think there is a nice complement of different sorts of wide receivers in the room now. Stuart and I will be back next week, and who knows? I mean, the Payton contract extension had been in the works, but we didn't know that was going to get done this week. So we shall see what the next week might bring for Broncos country. You can find Stuart over on Blue Sky SRoach123. I'm across social media at Colum from Cork. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do rate, review, subscribe, or better yet, just tell a friend about us. All that remains to be said is go Broncos.